Bill, Bill, do you have your handy dandy flag?
I do not.
You do not.
Oh,
I'm at a different location.
Okay. Oh, you look like you might be at the DPW.
That's correct.
Oh, poor you. All right, so I guess we will have to skip the pledge tonight. But today is April 25th, 2023. This is the meeting of the Sewer Commission. I'm John Reynolds, the current chairman of the Sewer Commission. And I have to read our usual statement here. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting of the Sewer Commission is being recorded and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. The following information is also provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link to join the public meeting webinar found on the posted agenda, or from a phone, dial the toll-free number 888-475-4499 and enter the webinar number 820-5953-7604. If you have not registered with Zoom, you will be asked for your name and an email address. Note, no participant ID is needed. Just press pound when asked. I'll do a roll call vote to confirm members that are here and the staff. Members, when I call your name, please answer in the affirmative. Brett Ramsden.
aye.
See, Dave McDonald might be joining us later. Mike Nault.
Aye.
I for myself, and Mike DeVakis is not here. Staff, when I call your name, please answer in the affirmative. Bill Bernard,
Aye.
Paula Bertram,
Here.
and Jane Rainley.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, doesn't look like we have any public, so unless someone else sees someone that I don't. Okay, is there any public comment from any members of the board, the commission, or the staff? No? All right, announcements. Saturday, May 6th is the town meeting at the middle high school. And Saturday, May 20th is the town election. Go Brett. Let's
Thank you very much.
Get everyone out there to vote. Are there any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, we'll get into current business. Now, almost everything on the agenda is pretty well interconnected. So, Paula, do you want to talk about what you know about the rate increase from Fitchburg?
So what I've been told is the rate increase will be 7% each year for the next 5 years. And I do know that Leominster is looking potentially at a rate increase. However, we don't know what that percentage will be. They are also looking at increasing our connection fees and adding, instead of the cent for cent that we have, potentially increasing that. But those are unknowns. So when we talk about the capital plan and the rate increase, this is only taking into account the Fitchburg. But I did put the ability to play with the Leominster number, but that's an unknown as of now.
Right. Has anyone had a chance to look at the spreadsheets that Paula has sent out?
Briefly. Same here, briefly.
Okay. I mean, I think this is a tough one because definitely Fitchburg is going up. And I think originally Barbara thought perhaps a 4% increase. not a 7% increase. And I guess at this point, I would expect Leominster probably will be going up. And again, and as Paula mentioned, the connection fees, like everything else, things are going up. So, we probably should have another discussion about a rate increase. And I'm not sure how we could do it at this point in time this year, but definitely I think next year we're going to have to be talking about a rate increase. And I think whether we did 5% this year and 5% next year or 10% next year, in the long run, it won't make that much of a difference. Mike, Brett, any thoughts here?
Well, we have 3% posted right now for FY25.
So the spreadsheets.
And
The
Go ahead, Paula.
spreadsheets that you're looking at. So what I did is that I sent out several documents and I have sent out a workbook as well. And I agree with the chairman that at this point, we can't really determine what an increase will be until we hear more from Leominster and until we get into those negotiations. But the other big part of the puzzle is capital planning. I had talked with Al Packard from CTE and John and I sat down with him and asked him and Bill and asked him to put together kind of a wish list of what he thought was needed at the various pump stations for equipment and for upgrades. And I put that in the workbook as on a sheet titled Al's recommendations. And his timeline was very spread out. And so what I did is at one point in fiscal 28, we would be looking at over $700,000 in capital expenditures. So that didn't make sense to me. So what I did is took all of those purchases and kind of spread them out from now until fiscal 28. And we haven't really tackled a lot of the capital expenditures that we need to. The other piece of this puzzle, and Bill and I were talking about this today, is we also have the manhole issue, which this capital plan doesn't take into account right now. So taking that information, which is fairly new information with estimated numbers, that needs to be incorporated into the rate increase discussion. So what I attempted to do was put together a forecast and a spreadsheet that will allow us to kind of play with the rate increases to see what that brings us in revenue, and then plugging in the capital plan numbers to kind of get an idea of when we get positive and stop pulling from retained earnings. We do have some hurdles this year. We did not bring in the revenue that we expected. And we also have some capital expenditures that we need to do. So we are not going to have the typical surplus that we usually have, which is in excess of at least 150,000. We're not going to have that this year. So trying to forecast out, given the situation we're finding ourselves in, is really the spreadsheet that I sent out. And I do have that, Mr. Chairman, if at some point you want to.
Yeah, if you could share that.
Thank you, Paula.
Yeah.
And Paul, as of now, you're anticipating a surplus of $17,000.
Correct. So if we look at the fiscal 23 to date, Mr. McDonald had requested to kind of get snapshots of where we are. So what I did do is I went through all of our expenditures and then estimated what we're going to spend the remainder of this fiscal year. And obviously that could be higher or lower. It's just an estimated number. But looking at revenue, you can see our sewer betterment line item, which is row 3, is estimated to be higher than anticipated, and that's from a town accountant. So that's estimated to be $42,000 over. However, if you look down at line item number 8, our user charges are expected to be significantly under. We had budgeted 1.1 million based on the billing that we'll be doing next year, and my estimated numbers were going to be $53,000 under what we had anticipated.
And Paula, that in part is because of higher than expected charge last quarter, correct?
No,
No.
No, that's the user charges. That's what we
Oh, right,
charge
right,
people.
right.
But when we go down to the sewer charges that we pay Lemonster, yes, that number is higher.
Yeah.
So in revenue total, taking everything into account, we're gonna be $34,000 over in what we anticipated. Because that takes into account privilege fees and interest, et cetera, that we hadn't budgeted. Salaries, we are over because we had to pay Barb, her vacation and sick time. And then I took the role at a higher rate, so we're gonna be $17,000 over in that line item. As of right now, without hiring an assistant business manager, we'll have a $9,000 surplus. I'm anticipating, we'll be paying Jane her full salary. So that would leave us a shortfall in salaries of $8,649. For overall costs, this is where we get into the user fees. We had budgeted $732,000 for Lemonster and Fitchburg usage. We got a very high bill from Lemonster and higher than normal from Fitchburg, and I think it was due to the I&I because of the quick snow melt that we had. But I mean, so far we've spent $613,000, and that doesn't take into account our next billing for this last fiscal quarter. So this could be higher or lower. Again, this is an estimated number. But I'm estimating we're going to be $85,000 under in that line item.
And then there's the snow melt Paula was talking about is that last snowstorm that we had. It was quite a bit of snow, and then there was rain and that melt, and it really peaked. I mean, in the long run, the total volume of water, I guess, would have been the same, but it would have been maybe perhaps not hit us so quickly.
Right, because we had that dry spell as well. last
Right.
Fall, summer.
So for departmental expenditures, I'm expecting that we're going to be $43,000 over. Infrastructure, and this is honestly a question. Actually, let me go back up to other just expenses first. So for planned capital, Bill, and this is a question really for you. To date, we've spent $15,019 on planned expenditures, and that's things like hose replacements, different equipment replacements that we've spent. I know that you had wanted to tackle some of the manholes. So if I look at the 5-year forecast, actually the capital plan for fiscal 23, I've plugged in this $32,000 number, and this number comes from wish list items that Al has requested. So for example, he would like to replace the crane at 1280 Mass Ave, the pump at 1790, and we can go through this, but I've plugged that total number into the fiscal 23 to date, and with a little bit of an overage. So that will be less than what we had anticipated, but whether or not it's enough is the question. So purchase of service, we're going to have some extra money, and I'm expecting that we're going to spend all of the money on purchase of service for outsourcing. Legal expenses, I think, will come in under because we haven't had a lot of legal situations come up. I do have town council office hours tomorrow. But I certainly don't expect that we'll spend all of that $5,000. The engineering services, I don't think that we're going to spend the $30,000 that we anticipated. Although I did, as requested by some members of the commission last meeting, I did reach out to Wright Pierce to see if they could give us an idea of a ballpark to look at redirecting flow and potentially if a treatment plant here is viable. Once I get those ballpark numbers, which I assume would be at the May meeting, we can talk about that. So I expect we won't spend all the money that we had anticipated in purchase of service. Our postage, electricity, telephone and water is slightly over what we had thought. So that's for $3,500 over approximately. So taking into account the money we took from retained earnings and taking into account all of those various line items that we just went over, I'm anticipating a surplus of $17,182 this fiscal year. And what will happen with those funds is they will go into retained earnings.
Okay. Mike, you looked like you were looking at that pretty intently. What?
Well, I just like getting back to saying, you know, for any ideas as far as a rate increase, I mean, it's pretty obvious, you know, when we can, there's going to be a rate increase. And I think that I mean, we can't ignore the budget. I mean, we have to, you know, we have to look at that. And with a 7% increase in Leominster unknown, obviously we got to wait till for Leominster, but I really think we're really gonna have to crunch the numbers and make sure that, you know, we don't want to be coming back, you know, once a year and saying, okay, another 3%, another 3%, another 3%. I think we're gonna have to take a real good look at a number that's gonna carry us through for, you know, hopefully 3 to 5 years, you know, with the projections we got and you know, and move on from there. I mean, way back when we did it, that's kind of the same philosophy we took, and you know, we got some good time out of it by doing it that way.
So, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Brett?
Well, you know, I mean, I like the thinking. I thought we had a discussion about maybe changing that to doing a smaller percentage every year. Maybe I remember that wrong. I guess my big concern, I mean, I could see Mike's thought working here. On the other hand, because I'm kind of thinking out loud while I'm talking, if you don't mind. In the way that we just went through, you know, the largest hit the economy's ever had as far as everything costing more. And so I believe inflation is actually back down to, you know, back down to 6%. It's not still back down to where it should be, but it's not at 30% now. We just went through basically a 30% increase. So maybe if we do or consider one large bump, it might carry us for a few years. I'm just trying to think it through all the way.
Well, we had talked about having a possible small increase every year for the next several years. It's tough because I know Lunenburg already, and has for a while, before I ever got on solar, had some of the highest rates in the state. But you know, it is what it is. So are we thinking possibly a larger increase next year, followed by perhaps a consistent increase every year thereafter? I know it's tough to say right now, but
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
sure.
this worksheet that I have on the screen right now
Yep.
kind of tries to give you an idea of that. And what this worksheet does is it takes the numbers and plugs them into a 5-year plan to kind of give us an idea of where we'll be. So this worksheet tells us what our current usage payment is to Fitchburg. We have 133 customers going to Fitchburg, and you can see that for each year in 2025, I figured one more customer, 2026, one more, et cetera. So you can change this number. It's a smart worksheet. So if you change this number,
Right.
it will change all of the other numbers. And I sent this out to you guys so you can play with it. There's just this note here, only edit the white cells.
Right.
But that will tell us what our payment to Fitchburg is, and that's based on a 7% increase that they've predicted over the next 5 years. Then if we go down to the Leominster usage, and this is based on, this is what we currently pay Leominster. We currently have 807 customers for Leominster. And this is what we pay. Now I'm anticipating a 3% increase in 2025, but again, that could change. So if I change that to 5, you can see that it changes all of the numbers.
Right.
So we'll be prepared once we know what that increase is from Leominster so that we can figure out what our payment is going to be. And if our numbers aren't what we think as far as new customers, 6 new customers, we can change that as well, and that will change our numbers. This part of the worksheet over here, what I did, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, is rather than looking at the number of customers, I looked at the number of units, and that gives us a better idea of what people actually pay. Because as I said, we have some buildings that get one bill, but they have 24 families or 24 units in them. So for units, we currently have 1,395 units. And the average bill per unit is $181 for residential. For commercial, we have 14 commercial units, and I only considered the units that are high volume usage as commercial. And their average bill per quarter is $1,786.18. So right now we have a 0% increase proposed for fiscal 24. If we forecast that out, and then just as an example, I put 12% for fiscal 25. And then this is what we have to pay for each user to Fitchburg and Leominster. So this is depending on how many users we have, this fee will go up or down. And then this last line on this section of the worksheet tells us what we have for non-committed user fees. So for available revenue. If you look at our 5-year forecast, which is this worksheet, I plugged in the numbers into fiscal 24. So if I go down to this figures our revenue at 1.220, which is what we had forecasted. I got to be honest with you, I'm not sure we're going to hit that. For fiscal
I'm sorry,
20,
Paula, my sound just went off for a couple seconds. Can you just
Yeah.
repeat that?
so for fiscal 24, we had predicted a $1.2 million revenue. I don't think that's going to happen.
Right,
Because we had anticipated 1.110 million in user charges, and we're not hitting our user charges this year. Although I will say in the last week, I've had numerous requests for connections, which is good news for us.
Yeah.
So we're projecting on a $1.2 million revenue. When I look down at payroll, and I look down at purchase of service, et cetera, this is now taking into account that capital worksheet that I just talked about. It's taking those numbers into account. So when we look out into fiscal 25, all of those numbers are plugging in automatically. So when we get down to the bottom and we look at where we are, so this year we were projecting a deficit of $218,690. And you can see if we keep the rate increase at what's projected, you can see that surplus or deficit goes down. Then if you take into account the sewer debt service, which is what we have to pay, you take into account the betterment revenues that we'll receive, which is the pink column here. And that tells us what our anticipated betterment revenues are, and then our deficit of betterment revenue or our surplus. This year we have a deficit. However, next year we have a positive. We have a positive 162,000, and then moving forward in fiscal 26, fiscal 27, it remains positive. So
Right,
this
and
is our, sorry.
I just want to interject, and I believe that these are the years that we've been looking at for a while, that we are anticipating this deficit. So go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, fiscal 24, we knew was going to be a really tough year, but fiscal 25 through fiscal 28, we become on the positive because our debt service falls off.
Right.
So this is our budgeted surplus or deficit. that based on the previous numbers that we just talked about. And then this is the number, sorry, this is what we would need to retain, retained earnings appropriation. Then we have to transfer money to the stabilization fund, transfer to OPEB. And so this year we're forecasting that a pull of $419,000 from retained earnings. Fiscal 25, we don't see a pull from retained earnings. We actually see that we put $5,735 into retained earnings. And you see that moving forward in fiscal 26, fiscal 27, instead of pulling from retained earnings, we're putting money in. But this is all dependent on a very substantial rate increase. So if we bring that rate increase down, all of these numbers will change. So this is really a worksheet that allows you to kind of play with numbers, figure out what happens, what if scenarios. And it's really just a tool to try to figure out what we need to do. So we don't, as you said, Mike, have to keep going back and saying, okay, oops, we forgot, we need to do another rate increase, which I don't think anybody wants to be in.
Well, I don't think it's unrealistic to have a small rate increase on our.
Right,
regular
right,
basis,
right.
especially given the current, what do you want to call it, economic situation, inflation, whatever. Okay.
So the spreadsheet I just showed you is based on a 12% increase in fiscal 25, 5, and then 5% thereafter. If you change those numbers, then you can take a look at the 5-year forecast and see what that does. So I don't know that we want to do that exercise tonight, but it's a tool that everybody could look at, so then maybe we can play out some different scenarios.
Right, and I would encourage everyone to play around with this spreadsheet. Mike, Brett, any thoughts?
First thought is, Paula, good job.
Thank
I
you.
like it. Yeah, I mean, looking ahead, the system isn't getting any younger, and we have a responsibility to maintain it, and you know, we can't have a failure. That's obvious. That wouldn't be good. So, you know, it's what the increase is going to be. It's just going to be putting all this together and coming out with a number, and that's going to be a lot with Leominster too. Once we know a short thing from Leominster, but you know, it's obvious there's an increase coming, and we just, you know, it's our job to make sure that it all stays status quo. That we're, you know, keeping the funds going and keep the system up to date.
Yeah. And Paula, correct me if I'm wrong, but Al's numbers over the time period were, what was it, 1.125 million?
I could tell you real quick. I don't have the total, but this is.
1.110, I think.
Hold on, I can tell
So,
you.
I mean, it basically, it came out to about $125,000 a year if you spread it evenly over the years.
Yeah, this is this worksheet right here.
Yeah.
When you put it in the context, it's not a lot of money for what we're
That
doing.
isn't right.
Right, and the age of the system, yeah.
Exactly. We look at it as one number, but it's over a 10-year period too. So you're like, you know.
Right.
So it's almost $1 million.
So, yeah, so about $100,000 a year on average.
Right, right. So what I did is I took Al's wish list and I plugged it in over a 5-year period. And that's what this worksheet is. And this workbook that I emailed you guys all today is this. And if we look at fiscal 24, and actually I plugged in fiscal 23 as well, and I've projected that into the numbers we just went over, is he's proposing that for Dana Street, we need a crane. For Francis Avenue, we need a panel. Leominster Road, we need a crane. Mass Ave, we don't need anything this year. Mass 2, a crane. Meadowwoods, a pump. West Street, nothing. So that for this year, I'm proposing, because he was proposing to spread it out, I'm proposing $32,000 in capital expenditures this year. In fiscal 24, all we would be replacing is the generator at Twin City. Generators are our highest capital item. So generator at Twin City would be $80,000. For fiscal 25, there's a lot of small expenditures, dialer, seals, dialer pumps, really pumps and seals, and then an HMI upgrade on West Street for a total of 71,000. So this goes out through fiscal 28. And this is based on the items that Al is saying that we need to replace. The highest ticket items end up in fiscal 28 and 29, and those are for generators. Generators right now, and these numbers obviously could go up or down, but right now we have a cost of $110,000 for the generator at Mass 2. So what I've tried to do is take those costs and spread them out over this 5-year period and then plug them into the budget.
Now, Al, obviously spent some time in this, and his experience came up with this. I haven't yet compared it to the maintenance report that Wright Pierce generated. Just to see how it compares. I mean, I don't know enough about these generators, what their life expectancy is.
20
there a
years, 20
20
years, 20 years.
I mean, is that based on just being 20 years old? Is it based on the amount of usage?
Al and I
Those
talked
are
about that.
hypothetical questions. I just don't know.
Yeah, Al and I talked about that, and I guess the average, this industry standard is 20 years, but he said that many generators go many more years, and obviously ours are nearing that age or at that age.
And
So
unfortunately, they're all about the same age.
right. So it's all dependent upon the maintenance and all dependent on, the usage that they get. But this is his recommendations. If we look at his recommendations, he was proposing, why I changed it is because 35,000 this year, 96 1 year, 16 a year. So I tried to kind of normalize that because
Right.
when we got out to fiscal 33, we projected all the way out. We get to $1 million. So we can't absorb that. So I spread it out over a longer period of time.
Okay. Mike, Brett, any questions for Paula? Any thoughts?
No, fantastic work, and
Thank you.
glad you got together with Al to go over these things. Nobody knows the system better than Al does. I mean, it's goes without saying. Wright Pierce, I think it's worth comparing some numbers, but Al is out there literally every day where the rubber meets the road. He knows what abuse everything is taking. He knows what's showing signs of possible failure, or things that would cause failure in the future. We have to heed what he's saying. It would definitely be in our best interest to do that. I like what Paula did by normalizing or spreading out the numbers a little more evenly, and doing that with prioritized needs that Al mentioned. I think it's got to be the way to go.
Yep. Bill, do you have any, you want to add anything here or any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think when we look at the Wright Pierce report, I don't think it's gonna get as specific as what Al gave us, but it is gonna say, do your upgrades at 20 years or 25 years. And, this may have to get adjusted over the years, something might go, we might have to bump it up, but it's a good start for us. It's a good planning tool. So, you can figure out rate increases that, don't hurt people all that much, but makes sense at the same time.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Paula on this?
okay to stop sharing, Mr. Chair, or do you want me to keep sharing?
Sure, you can take that down. You know, as I mentioned earlier, everything almost everything we're talking about tonight is very much integrated. The $218,000 deficit. I just want to talk about that for a minute. I know this can change quickly, but Paula, you're talking about a potential $17,000 surplus.
Mhm,
Right?
mhm.
And you know, we budgeted $12,000 for consulting if we needed Barbara, but I'm not suggesting that come out, but based on how quickly you're catching on, Paula, I mean, I don't think we'll be using all of that. But it's there. So that's another 12.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself on this, but I think the 218 won't end up being 218. I mean, it's still going to be a shortfall, but okay. Any other questions on the rate increase, the capital planning, or the budget update?
My only comment, John, would be, you know, what you just mentioned is, you know, without nickel and diming, let it play out. And
Right.
we've got another budget coming up next year, and we got a rate increase coming up next year. So that's gonna all factors that are gonna, you know, it's kind of an unknown area at this point, but it's all factors we'll be dealing with at that point.
Okay. All right. Do you want to move on to administrative assistant?
So Bill and I interviewed five people, Bill. I think it was 5 people. We had one candidate that stood out. She has a lot of the things that I've been doing is converting things into a database to do some of these planning tools. And this individual has a lot of experience with that, and a lot of municipal experience. She had been a selectman in Townsend for 12 years, so she has a lot of background in municipal government. Unfortunately, she does not want to work 24 hours a week. She only wants to work 19 hours a week, and she is not interested in benefits. Unfortunately, because this position is currently a union position, we cannot hire anyone under 24 hours a week without going back to the union for collective bargaining. Heather was on vacation last week, so I haven't talked to her. Both Bill and I have been in touch with Julie. The other point that I'll make is I'm not sure that we do need someone 24 hours a week. I think that 19 hours a week would be sufficient. But we're kind of at a standstill with that position. Bill, and I don't know if you want to chime in or.
No, I think that explains where we're at.
Okay. And I think, Paula, we talked a little bit about this, that you've done an incredible amount of streamlining, to say the least. So if you don't think we need 24 hours, and I'm going to guess we probably don't need 24 hours. So, Mike, Brett, any thoughts?
How do we bring it back to 19 without, can that be done without going to a town decision, or how big of a change is this, Paula? To get it back to 19, or can we just say, let's make it a position of 19 hours?
Well, I don't know how town employment works. But Mike, you might be smiling a bit there under your breath. I know you and Dave talked about a clerical position versus a assistant business manager. And is that a path that we could head down? a way of reducing the hours.
I put that out to Julie, is potentially creating a different position, and she was resistant to that because she said the position is already created. It's really a matter of renegotiating with the union to reduce the hours.
Okay.
But she didn't, and Bill, I don't know if you had the same feeling from her email, but that was the sense that I got.
And you do need somebody with more skills than, I mean, she obviously possesses those, but you need someone who can stand in for you. You need somebody who knows what's going on in the big picture more than just pushing some pencils.
All right, so it sounds like the assistant business manager position is sort of on hold until we can work with Julie or the union to bring it down to 19 hours. I mean, how long
Yes.
process is that? Paula?
That's what I don't know. I have to meet with Heather to talk about it. And Bill, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to talk with Heather since she's been back.
Not yet, no.
But it's something we need to tackle. I'm not sure how long this person will wait, quite frankly. Which is unfortunate because I think she would be a good fit. But if we have to re-advertise, that's what we'll end up having to do. Because I don't know that it makes sense to hire somebody for 24 hours a week if we don't necessarily need the 24 hours a week. And obviously, if we don't have to pay the benefits, that's a cost savings to us. The budget that we have right now is based on fringe benefits for that individual. And additionally, I will point out that the $17,000 surplus is without hiring an assistant right now.
Is without hiring an assistant?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, there goes my number that I was gonna come back to.
So with an
My
assistant,
number would be $17,000 less, okay.
with an assistant, and I forecasted that out, if we were to hire someone in mid-May, it would be $6,000 if we did the 19 hours a week. So it would be a little over 11,000 in surplus. Again, these are just estimated numbers because they.
Right, no, every budget is.
Yeah, but if we were to hire an assistant, that number would go down. Unfortunately, I really would have liked to have somebody on in mid-May so we could be working on these changes together. But I honestly don't see that happening if we have to go back to the union.
Okay. All right, so the position, as I said, basically is on hold until it can be renegotiated, right? Okay. Any final words on that from anyone?
I would just like to say, I am in favor of that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me,
Right.
but I have no clue on the union part of it and all, the posting and all that. So, but I think it's a great idea.
I do too, but Paula, as we talked about, I don't want you to end up being the business manager and the assistant business manager at the same time. That wasn't the intent, so.
Me either.
So let's, work with Julie, Heather, the union. Let's see where it goes and how long we think it might take. Just keep us updated, okay? All right. The 4:11 minutes. I personally haven't read those yet. So I would prefer not to take a vote on those tonight. Unless
They're
anyone
quite
objects.
involved. It's
What's that?
4 page. It's quite involved. There's actually 4 pages.
Yeah, I apologize. That was
Minutes.
almost a 3-hour meeting.
And Jane did an
Yeah.
amazing job on those minutes.
I was about to say, very nice job, Jane. Thank you for all your work
Even
there.
though you didn't read them, Brett?
Thank you.
I actually did read them, yeah.
Oh, good. I got about halfway through.
I believe Jane put in for overtime. I'm not sure, but I think
Okay, the town meetings coming up. Mike and Brett, you gonna be there?
I don't know if I can make it yet, but I will try. I don't
Mike?
hear well in that auditorium, to be honest with you.
Mike, you gonna be there hanging out with Dave?
I can't say for sure. It's coming up fast, so we'll see what happens. Yeah.
I mean, I
Mr.
did,
Chairman,
go ahead. Paula.
I just want to say I am supposed to be on a trip that weekend. If it's necessary that I will attend, I will take my own car and come back. But if other commissioners are able to attend for the sewer commission, I would appreciate a pass to that, but I will come back if necessary. I'm going to be in Vermont.
All right, I did text Dave today and he said as of now, he's planning on being there. As I started to talk earlier, you know, my wife and I are still trying to limit the being in large crowds simply because she works with frail elderly and nursing homes and assisted living are still really restrictive if someone even has a slight sniffle. I made an exception for Barbara's retirement, but anyway, I'll talk to Dave. And see whether he's going to be able to actually go or not. Okay. Any action items for future meetings? Other than budget, capital planning. Again, Paula, you've put together some really good numbers to help
Some amazing work, really.
help us figure out what's going to be happening for the next several years. So thank you.
Thank you.
So no action item suggestions. Okay, business manager report.
Just wanted to let you guys know that Chad Empey and Al will be at our May meeting on May 9th. Unfortunately, I don't have the reports yet from Al. I have sent him, was hoping we could work together last week on Excel spreadsheets, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So I'm hoping that prior to the May meeting that we will have an opportunity to do that. But they are in attendance and I thought it made sense to talk about the RFP and their interest in the RFP and where we are from an operational standpoint right now and potentially some of these capital expenditures. I thought it would be a good idea to kind of go over that. The other is the operation and maintenance RFP. I had sent it back after you guys approved it in April. Unfortunately, it is still being reviewed. I heard from Julie today that it is in her queue with the other RFPs that she's reviewing. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to send that out yet. As soon as we get the go ahead, we will be doing that. I've never done a municipal RFP. I've done other RFPs, but not a municipal. So I'm not even sure how to go about that, doing that. So I'm hoping Julie will help us with that. But unfortunately, it hasn't gone out yet.
Yeah, that's too bad. Okay. Anything else, Paula, under business manager report?
No, I'm meeting with the only thing I'll just say is I'm meeting with town council tomorrow to talk about some of the things that we've talked about at the last few meetings, A&D Crossroads and the potential to put a municipal lien, the potential to charge additional flow for additional privilege fees for increased flow. And I also want to talk to him about the privilege fee assessment bylaw and clearly understand how that works. But really that's it.
Yeah, Paula was showing me that it's not 100% clear as to when we should charge a betterment versus a privilege fee when a property is subdivided or an extension is granted. So she's going to talk to town council about that to help clarify it.
Excellent. Thank you, Paula.
Okay. Let's see, we don't have any public anymore. So any public comment from the commissioners or the staff?
I do want to say just outstanding work by Paula and Jane. The changes, Paula, you've been making and the layouts you've been putting out, just very helpful and very impressive. So
Thank you, Brett.
I think that's goes for all of us, Paula. Let's see, any other public comment? No? Okay, the upcoming schedule, May 6th is the town meeting. May 9th is our first meeting in May, then May 30th and June 13th. So I guess unless anyone has anything else to say, does someone want to jump in and make a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I just do have one other thing.
Sure.
I am going to send out some dates to Mike and Dave that have been suggested by Lemonster.
Oh, yeah, yep.
The only question that I have is they would like to meet during the day. And I don't know if that's possible for you, Mike. I know it's going to be difficult for Dave.
I mean, it's definitely possible for me. Actually, I prefer to meet during the day.
Okay,
But well, I can't speak for Dave, so.
okay. All right, I'll send some.
If we get dates together, we'll figure
Yeah.
something out.
Yeah, I'll send some options out if you can just
Yeah.
let me know so I can firm it up with them.
Sure.
Okay. Obviously, these meetings would be much better in person, but maybe it can be a combination of in-person and Zoom. I think anytime there's negotiation, it's
let's give it.
watch people's expressions closely.
I say let's give it some more time.
Okay, anything else? So does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Anyone want to second that, Mike?
I will second that.
Any further discussion about that? Seeing none, let's take a roll call vote. Brett,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and I for myself. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all, and I'm glad it wasn't as long as last meeting.
Good night, Lunenburg.
Right, good night,
Night.
Here,
everybody.
here.
Night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.